Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth, and welcome back to my show called Hopeless to Happy. Today, I'm excited about my guest here, Susan Anderson. She is a psychotherapist who has over 30 years experience helping people with abandonment recovery. And if you're not real clear on what that is, you will know here really quickly. So first of all, I would love to say welcome, Susan, and thank you for joining me on my
Thank you
side.
for having me.
And you're welcome. And so to jump right in here, so you work with victims of abandonment, trauma, grief, and loss. So I'm a little familiar with that, but maybe the audience doesn't have, a full awareness or understanding of what that actually means. Can you describe a little bit more of that?
Okay, well, I work with the primal abandonment wound. It's the thing that's in all other kinds of loss that make it so painful. It's the thing that goes on when there's a divorce or a breakup or when someone dies. It's the primal wound, the primal abandonment fear and shame that get triggered by these different experiences. It's what makes going through all the other losses so painful, because we're dealing not with the heartbreak itself per se, or the grief over death per se. We certainly do deal with the specifics, but we're looking at what is going on under the surface, the underlying primal wound of abandonment.
Okay, so you're saying the primal part of that is the underlying. Is that how you're describing that?
Yes, it's the primal fear. You know, we all were born, so we all have a fear of suddenly being thrust out of this warm, beautiful womb and into this room and separated from, the mother that gave birth to us momentarily. We all have that disruption, and we all have built in a kind of reaction in our nervous system to separation. So we all have a tendency to have this anxiety or fear around disconnection. And it sort of conditions us in a normal way to have a natural, normal fear of abandonment. It's primal. It's not always negative. It motivates us for fear of being ostracized. It motivates us to be good to people and have good relationships and to bond with people and to hold on to our attachments where possible. So it's a very important driving human force that holds the human race and many mammals as well together. So we're really looking at that primal fear and how that can become at times problematic when it gets triggered.
Okay. Sounds familiar, we'll say.
It's universal.
Yeah, I could see how that would be.
And so is the shame that goes with it. It's reciprocal with the shame of, am I enough? Because if we fear being abandoned, it goes hand in hand with, am I enough to hold on to somebody? Am I worthy? Am I too defective? Is there something wrong with me that will cause me to be abandoned? So it's only natural that as human beings, we have a fear of abandonment and a kind of primal shame of worrying if we're enough. Again, that's universal. It's perfectly normal and natural, and some people have more struggle with it than others, depending on our history or our temperament.
Where do you think the shame comes into play, though? Because we're talking, abandonment, trauma, grief, and loss. So if we are feeling shameful, where is that stemming from?
The shame is coming from very early on, when we initially started to discover as infants that we could bring our parents to the cribside by screaming, or we could somehow participate in the process of having the connection by smiling and playing peekaboo and cooing and and screaming, and having our parents come to the side. So sometimes we would feel powerful, omnipotent, because we could, encourage adults, grown-ups to take care of us by being lovable or by crying. And other times we would try those things and the parent couldn't come running. It didn't happen so automatically. And at those times, the feeling is more, oh, I can't, I'm not strong enough. Not that we had words, just a feeling, a very primal feeling without words. We don't speak yet, we're infants. So the shame, the natural, normal kind of shame that's part of every human being, is just built into the fact that we don't always, command everyone to rush to our side. Therefore, maybe we're weak or we're not enough. And then the next time we cry, they come back and we have good feelings. So there's a mixture of all the different emotions that have been conditioned from going through infancy. And they're very natural and normal.
So this is kind of what you're saying, like a human experience of like tests and trials. Sounds like, when we're trying to figure out our space in the world, we, as small children, we may, even though we may not understand why things aren't going the way we think they should, but it leaves us with an emotional wound per se.
Well, as we get older and we go to school, and we see other children. Now today, because of what we're going through, that might be more difficult because kids are more isolated. But historically, when you get to see other children and you get to try to connect with a child, some people have an easier time connecting than others. And so we tend to compare ourselves to other people or judge ourselves based on how well other people respond to us. And we can tell that, let's say, Johnny is very popular and the teacher's nice to him and all the kids want to play with him. And nobody picked us for the kickball team. And so there's this whole self-evaluation that takes place as we go out into the world and, interact with teachers and especially with our peers. We can compare ourselves to how our peers are getting along. And of course, some of the comparison is positive and some of it isn't so positive.
It's very interesting how you talk about the kickball team, because I actually had a similar experience in elementary school where we had kickball. I didn't know the kids still play that, but and I wasn't like the best player, but I ended up getting better. But in the beginning, I was like one of the last two or three, and it does leave like a sting. There's like this feeling of
it does. Imagine the child who's not good at reading and the other children are reading so well and they're in these reading groups in the classroom, which are called Blue Jay or Stars or something like that, and they're in one of the lower reading groups that teachers don't say that's the low reading group, but we can feel that we're not in the best reading group. And so we're comparing ourselves to other children. And it's real hard when we compare ourselves and we see other kids better at something than we are. We wonder, why aren't I a good kickball player? Why is it so hard for me to read? Am I inadequate? Am I not worthy? We don't put words to these things. Most of this is just feeling level stuff, but we're absorbing a sense of ourselves from these experiences.
Do you think that the abandonment also stems from the child-parent relationship?
Yes, you could have perfect parents who love you dearly and always show it and are so positive, and you could still have a lot of abandonment fear. So we can't really, make these hard and fast rules that we can blame it on the parents. It could still happen even if you had perfect parents that, one day they didn't pick you up on time from the daycare center and you panicked and thought you'd been abandoned. But a lot of kids grow up with a lot of problems in the family, such as one of the parents or both of them could be alcoholic. So the parent is physically there, but not emotionally there. And so they're not able to feel good about themselves and strong and stable because they have to work so hard to get the parent to give them what they need. Or maybe one of the kids in the family was born with a severe problem, like, a physical problem or a cognitive problem. And the parents just have to give that child more support, more help. And they get it, and they stand on the outside, letting their parents give most of the attention to the other child. But, they still aren't getting what they need. Or kids grow up, one of the parents may be going through an abandonment. Maybe they were left, and now they're feeling so confused because their parent is going through the emotional turmoil of abandonment, or they feel bad about the other parent who's now all alone and feels sad because they're no longer living with that parent. So all of these different scenarios can just create and it can trigger all of that abandonment fear.
So in this space of abandonment, if someone is in that place, how does this lead to self-sabotage?
Well, the adulthood is all about taking responsibility. But because these experiences, these abandonment scenarios in childhood can accumulate, they cause us to abandon ourselves. I mean, to give you an example of abandoning yourself, let's say you decided you were going to be an astronaut, and now you're 25, and not only are you not an astronaut, but you didn't even graduate from college because of some problem, or you didn't get to go to college. So you're disappointed in life and in yourself, and you're kind of blaming yourself for not being as good as somebody else who's in some fabulous business and they're doing well. So there's self-disappointment, self-frustration, sometimes even self-hatred. Oh, look, I should have done this and I didn't. I was lazy. Oh, I wish I had done it. So there are all these negative feelings toward the self, which is the opposite of self-love, at being disappointed in yourself and frustrated with yourself. So when you're disappointed in yourself for not achieving your goals, that's just one example. You kind of leave the self behind. You get in that anger toward yourself, you commit self-abandonment. You leave that self behind. And you live on the outside of the self. You're now out there using substances, shopping, alcohol, whatever you can find to kind of feed the emotional hunger. So when you no longer have a great love within yourself for yourself, you tend to self-sabotage because you've left yourself behind, you've abandoned yourself, and now you're on immediate gratification, whatever feels best in the moment. And the biggest symptom of self-sabotage in adult life, and all of us have this to some extent, is avoidance, inertia. We should be doing X, Y, Z, but we're not. And if we did it, we'd be successful and all these wonderful things, but we keep putting it off. So the idea of self-abandonment, which comes from having unresolved abandonment, causes us to sabotage ourselves by avoiding, procrastinating, acting out, over drinking, overspending, over watching television, by all kinds of behaviors that are self-defeating. And that's the self-sabotage.
I guess that could even flow into addictions, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, so how is it that you begin to help people kind of unravel this and start the healing process?
Well, I had been sort of focusing on abandonment as I was a therapist working in a psychiatric hospital and with a private practice. And I saw things through the lens of abandonment feelings and separation anxiety. But then I went through my own adult abandonment, which brought me to my knees and helped me to realize that the tools that I was using on my clients, and you know, everyone was very grateful for these tools, but they weren't enough. You know, they only helped me a little bit, and I needed a lot of help to get through this. I was so devastated. So I began doing a whole lot of research for 3 years, researching like a maniac, becoming very nerdy, trying to find this information. And I did find some extremely valuable tools that I began to apply. And not only did I apply them to myself, but I had all of these people who were going through very similar experiences. And I began to see what worked and what didn't work. And so out of this process and over a period of many years, very research driven, I developed a program of abandonment recovery. And of course, I've been sharing it ever since.
Awesome. So what is the name of that program?
Well, I give it the nickname Akeru. It's a Japanese word that means to begin and to end. And it refers to the fact that when something feels tragic and it ends and it's terribly painful, it's also the beginning of an opportunity to develop a whole new relationship with yourself, which is long overdue and can only help you move in a brand new, very positive, profound direction. It takes work. Akeru doesn't imply, oh, well, you know, you just flip it. You do flip it, but the flipping it takes a tremendous effort and being very consistent.
So it sounds like it's something that could potentially be scary for somebody who may not be ready to face all those emotions.
Yeah, so it's a layered approach. So it is true that a lot of people who are going through abandonment are so fragile at that moment that what they need is immediate TLC. They need an immediate help. So the first level of, you know, Akeru is just providing, you know, a little relief from the pain. When you're in that kind of pain, it's really time management because you're having to get through each day, you know, the best you can. So you're learning how to manage your time in a constructive, healthy way. So the program really helps you gradually get yourself through the process of healing.
Great. So you provide this environment that just helps the person little by little and not just overwhelm them with everything.
Yeah, I provide, well, I've written copious instructions about it in my books, but also I give workshops because when I get people to practice these exercises in a group, they just help each other so much. They motivate each other. The exercises really make sense when they see other people reacting to them. So I do everything I can to talk about them, teach them, write about them, and also run programs where they do it. I have online abandonment recovery workshops, and believe it or not, even, you know, as little square faces in a Zoom screen, it's amazing how helpful it is to people to learn these exercises in a group.
Well, I would say that that was probably very beneficial to have that communal type of support. You know, I think that's a lot of our kind of issues even today is that, you know, we have all this social media stuff, but we're so disconnected. We don't have true community. So it sounds like you're providing that extras communal support for them to, you know, go through the process together.
People don't tend to talk about this stuff when it's just, if you and I were to sit down just meeting each other and we had a cup of tea somewhere together, chances are I'm not going to tell you about my abandonment fears and you won't tell me. But if you're attending, a special workshop, all of a sudden people are just saying the most incredible things at their own comfort level. There's no pressure, but somehow the fact that it's a community of people all working on the same issue, the comfort level is tremendous, and it's a relief to be able to just talk about this stuff. And people are shocked to hear it come out of their own mouth. They didn't even know they were feeling these things, but in fact they were.
Beautiful. So is what you're describing, is this what sets apart your program from other programs?
Sets it apart from what? From other programs, did you say?
Yes.
Well, I would say that the distinguishing factor between the Akeru program of abandonment recovery, the exercises, is the fact that it focuses on doing. Because most people, somehow the mind believes that it can think its way out of abandonment. So I'm sure that you have a friend or two like this, but they go through a breakup or they're in a pattern where they keep getting abandoned over and over again, or they're only attracted to unavailable people and they keep winding up alone, a typical adult pattern. And they could talk your ear off for hours and days about whether so-and-so called or didn't call, what they said, and all the stuff. It's like obsessive thinking, because the mind wants to find an object. The mind wants to connect. And when stuff is getting in the way, it goes through this obsessive process. So the mind tricks us into thinking that we can analyze our way out of this problem or think our way out. And we could go to a therapist and have catharsis and cry our way out. But unfortunately, it doesn't work. The way to get out of abandonment is through doing. We do our way out. So the program, it consists of a whole bunch of exercises. It's physical therapy for the brain. You actually do exercises, you do them. You don't read about them or think of it, you do the exercises. And then little by little, they help to strengthen the muscle of the healing part of the brain. And little by little, you start to see improvement. That, I think, the emphasis on doing baby steps. We don't expect people to take leaps. That's just an unrealistic expectation. But little tiny, teeny baby steps. But the emphasis on doing and the fact that it's gradual, physical therapy for the brain, incremental, that is what makes it the program effective and I think special.
Yeah, it even sounds like, taking those tiny baby steps can really be a huge thing for somebody, right? Like, even though it seems small, right?
Huge. You could take a baby step that is so tiny that you can't even imagine how it will help, but it's all you can manage today. You're in a lazy mood, you're depressed, you just don't feel, but so you're going to do a baby step. So what you'll do is you'll go to your mailbox, and when you pull your mail out of your mailbox, you'll make sure to get into the moment just for a split second. You'll notice if you hear traffic or birds chirping, or you'll just take a moment to tune in, and then you're done. You did your baby step. How could that possibly add up to healing? And you don't have to worry about that, because if you do a step like that every day, they do accumulate. And then one day your baby step might be, I'm too shy. Maybe I should join Toastmasters. Oh, I can't do that. That's a ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. And then but you thought it. You wrote it down. That's a baby step. And then another day, you actually call and find out. Now, Toastmasters might not be meeting in person right now, but they certainly will in the future. You might find out they might meet on Zoom when they're meeting, and you're not going to go. You just write it in your calendar, but you took a baby step. You wrote it in your calendar. And then maybe another time you actually, I'm going to check it out and sit in the back row. And you go, and there's someone there you know, or you meet somebody that you kind of thought was nice to talk to. The next thing you know, you're engaged in a new activity that is making an enormous change in your life. It's just a small group, a bunch of people, kind of a format, but it happens to make the difference. Or you join an Al-Anon program, or, you know, I could name so many little baby step things that wind up becoming a leap, because it's only a baby step, but somehow you leapt forward from it.
Awesome. I think those are the most important things. Is, you know, we put a lot of expectations on ourselves, and it seems to be like kind of a cyclical, well, I could say maybe even a spiral. You know, when we know we want to take a step, but then we keep going back to the I'm not good enough, right? And so like it keeps, and we keep in the place of doing nothing.
And then the shame that's unconscious. We all have shame. It's very unconscious. It's hidden. It's buried in the basement. So we don't even know we have it. But the shame makes it hard to ask for help. So let's say we're trying to lose weight, and we've always done it ourselves. We don't need anyone to help us. But we're struggling because we're bored because of coronavirus or whatever, and we're eating. And this time we ask for help. We go out and we get help. We join, you know, a program, or we call a professional, or tell a friend, or whatever. So a lot of times the solution involves recognizing that we don't have the answer within ourselves. But in order to do that, we have to at least leap over that shame that says we should be able to solve this. Other people do it on their own. Why do I have to, you know, ask for help? But a lot of times asking for help is blocked because of shame, but then we overcome that and finally do ask for help. A coach, you know, hiring a coach, a personal trainer, calling a friend, whatever.
Yeah, and I think even in my own personal experience, you know, I've you know, experienced the shame and the embarrassment or whatever too, but I've come to realize that, you know, asking for help is okay. It's okay to not know how to take the next step, and it's okay to ask somebody to help you, guide you in the direction that you need to go, because that's, I think, what we, again, like we're missing, like that community kind of aspect, you know, where we now have to seek out the help that we need from professionals or those who have gone through it, you know, and knowing that it's okay to not know everything.
Yeah, breaking that shame barrier and reaching out to a friend or a professional or a group or whatever it is. Just breaking that shame barrier and sharing the dilemma and asking for help gives you a tiny little bump up in your self-esteem. You may not feel it right away. You might feel it later on down the line, but you have this little bump up. And it's something that you get a lot more of in, you know, in an abandonment workshop where there's constant sharing and everyone's helping everyone. This is going on the whole time. You experience that bump up. But even at home, just the idea that you're working on something and your inertia is getting in the way. You know, you swear you're going to, but you don't take the action that you think. Just calling a friend and saying, I've got to tell you something. I'm making you a witness to something. Maybe telling you will help me. And you're breaking your shame barrier and you get that little bump up.
Nice. Yes, that's a important reminder that we can even reach out to our friends. It seems like even for me, I struggle at times to reach out to people. I think just because, again, our society is kind of separated, by so many factors. But, you know, even just remembering a past experience with a friend that, I know they were there for me at one time. Maybe I can call them again and ask.
I agree with what you're saying about how it's so natural in adult life to experience so much separation from so many significant people. And so part of, the baby step that we might take might be little by little, gradually, making a reconnection with somebody, a new connection with an old person.
Yeah. How does somebody go about beginning to get help from you in this realm of abandonment?
Well, abandonment recovery is so universal. People all over the world from all walks of life and if you're going through an acute abandonment, such as you've just been left by someone you love, you need help. I mean, help. It is so painful to go through. But even if you have a chronic issue, like you're caught up in a pattern where it just makes it hard for you to get in a relationship, or you avoid relationships altogether to avoid getting hurt, or even if you're caught up in a chronic issue that's just always sort of there, you need help. And so I've tried to provide help in every way that I can. Doing interviews, for one thing, because your viewers may listen to this and say, I can identify with that. And now I know there's help. Or I've written 4 books, and I've written them in different ways and styles to appeal to all different needs of different people. I have websites that reach out all over the world, and people all over the world have written to me, and sometimes in languages that I have to translate using Google Translate. Very interesting to meet people from all over the world. And then I incorporate the outreach that I get from people on my websites and my email and so forth. And I incorporate that into a new understanding so that each new book and each new article reflects more that I've learned. So I started this process many years ago. And since then, I have at least 25, 26 years ago, collecting data. I have now amassed an awareness of abandonment and how it affects people, how abandonment and shame, how it fosters self-sabotage, the different impacts that it has on so many lives and why, and then what to do about it. So the help is in all these different ways, and also more recently in providing online abandonment recovery workshops.
Great. So that leads me into the offer that you do have for the viewers. Can you describe what it is that you're providing for them?
Well, the free offer is 5% discount on one of these online abandonment recovery workshops. It's a 5-session workshop, and it meets once a week for 2.5 hours, and you meet people from all over the world, and everybody's on the same page. People have different issues, but they're all pretty much identifying with the same basic emotions. We're really very alike, on a very primal level. But the offer is a 5% discount.
Awesome. And what is your website where they can find this information?
Okay. The website is abandonment.net. That's one website, 2 websites. Abandonment.net is one, and the other website is outerchild.com. That is the website for self-sabotage. The reason I have 2 websites is, what if somebody looking to overcome self-sabotage didn't realize that it was coming from unresolved abandonment, they wouldn't know to search for abandonment. So there are two websites, dot, I'm sorry, outerchild.net, outerchild.net, and abandonment.net. They're both .net. And those two websites will go to the same place. Moi.
Awesome. Great. And we will have the links for those websites as well on the, you'll find those below in the speaker page and in the email. So, and we'll have the coupon code as well there for you to access if you would like to participate in Susan's workshop. And I thank you again for joining me today, Susan. It's been a pleasure having you. And this topic of abandonment, it sounds like you have help for those who are seeking help from this particular topic. So I hope that those who are listening today will take advantage of what Susan has to offer. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Okay.